Hello everyone, today is 7th of March, Friday, so I hope you'll have a wonderful day and a great weekend. Now it's about 1 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. And there are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment. Although before I start, let me make a little announcement, which is that from now on I will no longer publish full news shows, full news updates on my YouTube and Rumble channels. This program will move to my Patreon and Boosty page. So on daily basis I will publish on Patreon and Boosty first and quite often second news updates, some additional extra content, and from each news update I might make one or two short videos, which will be then published on YouTube and Rumble pages. So there will be some content on these channels on YouTube and Rumble also. But if members of our bigger community would like to have access to my shows or to my news updates, hopefully they will consider to support my work and join our communities on Patreon and Boosty. After all, this is a full-time job, some 60 to 80 hours being spent on this project on weekly basis, and I have no option but to focus now on Patreon and Boosty more to sustain this project. By the way, that's it. I will maintain on YouTube live stream community chat on Mondays, although I might change the time of that live stream, and possibly I will add one more live stream towards the end of the week on Thursdays or Fridays, if there will be interest of community in that additional live stream. So yes, this is the announcement. Once again, hopefully members of our community, our bigger community on YouTube and Rumble that considers my news updates interesting and useful, hopefully they will consider to join me on Patreon or the Boosty. That's been said, dear friends, and of course links to my Patreon and Boosty are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And well, that's been said, let's go through some news now. And first of all, TASS news agencies report that Russian Defense Ministry confirmed liberation of Andreevka settlement. I reported about progress of the Russian armed forces in this and many other directions. And well, as I predicted, the Russian Defense Ministry definitely did talk several days before confirming that the Russian troops liberated Andreevka. This is Andreevka, by the way, settlement, main stronghold of the Kyiv regime in this so-called Andreevka fortified area. And well, that fortified area no longer exists. Russian troops neutralize enemy forces, and the progress of SMO continues. Obviously, we have Vzglyad News papers report, and many other media outlets also reported that Russian armed forces conducted large-scale long-range missile strikes on military and logistics infrastructure of the Kyiv regime. An air alert has been issued throughout Ukraine following strikes by caliber cruise missiles launched from Russian Navy ships, as well as strategic bombers that launch Kh-101 missiles. I saw on several other media outlets reports that main task of this airstrike was to neutralize energo infrastructure of the Kyiv regime, although I'm quite sure some military targets were neutralized also. And obviously energo infrastructure is a part of a logistical infrastructure of the Kyiv regime that is obviously used by Zelensky's terrorist regime to continue its terrorist activities. So therefore it is a legit target. RT is also reporting that well, US-Ukraine meeting might take place in Saudi Arabia shortly. This was said by Trump's envoy. So American and Ukrainian negotiators are planning to meet in Saudi Arabia. US presidents Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, told the journalists on Thursday. His statement comes after a public falling out between Trump and Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky, who a US president accused of not wanting to make a peace with Russia. And we have additional information on that this meeting between US and Kyiv regime's representatives might take place on 12th of March in Riyadh. US delegation will be led by head of State Department Marco Rubio. Also, Trump's national security advisor Michael Waltz will participate in this meeting, and Steve Witkoff himself, who made an announcement about this upcoming talks. Meanwhile, RIA Novosti is reporting that Trump demanded that Ukraine agree to an early ceasefire. So US President Donald Trump, as a condition for signing a deal on minerals, allegedly demanded that Kyiv agrees to an early ceasefire with Russia. This was reported by Bloomberg initially, then other media outlets reported. Also, according to informed source of the Bloomberg, European officials were informed that President Donald Trump wants to link their proposed deal between the United States and Ukraine on the supply of minerals with the requirements for Kyiv to commit to an early ceasefire with Russia. Some interesting change in approach of White House, but yet again, is Moscow was clear enough that temporary ceasefires are not that Russia is interested in. I think Moscow was quite clear on this topic that Russia has no interest in temporary solutions like ceasefire, because obviously Russia views such a development as an opportunity for Russian enemies to rearm and reinforce their proxies in Ukraine and then re-engaged in this proxy war. So Moscow would never agree on these temporary measures. Moscow's interest is in a fundamental resolution of the crisis, which will require root causes of the issue to be addressed, new architecture of the security in Europe and in world to be worked out by major capitals, and many other steps have to be taken to resolve the crisis generally. But these temporary measures like ceasefire definitely is not the way to achieve this, right? Therefore, it is a bit confusing why Trump is talking about this ceasefire temporary measures. I don't know. Maybe, by the way, it is that US and Europe are playing sort of good cop, bad cop game here with Russia, and possibly I would not be surprised, at least, and no one should be surprised if after several days or several weeks, US will come out with some initiatives about ceasefire, deployment of NATO troops in Europe, this and that, and with all the topics that Russia already said that is unacceptable for it. And then US might say, you know what, you see, I pressure Kyiv regime, they agree on ceasefire, they agree on our terms, and now Russia is disagree with it. It's Russia's fault, so therefore we have to go all in now in this proxy war. Maybe that's their game plan that Western ruling class has, because I find it difficult to understand what the hell is going on with the Western so-called elites, that they are constantly talking about some proposals that they know that are unacceptable for Russia. This is clearly some sort of honest fake play on part of US, I believe, and we will soon receive enough confirmations of that. if US was honest, then Trump would talk about terms that are acceptable for Russia, not about some temporary ceasefire and European troops or NATO troops in Ukraine, right? This whole situation more and more looks like some sort of deception on part of the West. And I'm quite sure Russian leadership will take whatever steps are necessary to make sure that these games of the Western so-called elites would not be successful. RIA Novosti, meanwhile, is reporting that a US company suspended its transfer of satellite information to Kiev regime. Okay, this is also part of this deception operation, I guess, because US wants to demonstrate that, you see, I pressure the Kiev regime. And finally, they agree on ceasefire. And Russia is now acting wrong, and Russia is disagree on ceasefire. So they don't want peace. That's what their narrative of their collective West is going to be. Shortly, by the way, just mark my word. Because if US leadership was honest, and if they really wanted the escalation, then they wouldn't talk about some temporary measures. They will talk about some serious stuff that Russia would have interest in, right? And in confirmation of my skepticism, by the way, we have this report, for example, that director of the CIA stated that US will continue to support Kiev in the conflict with Russia. Of course, US will continue to support their proxies, by the way. Of course, because Trump and his administration, they all are lying. They are dishonest. 100%, by the way. I have no doubts about that. Right? CIA Director John Ratcliffe said that the United States will continue to support Ukraine in its conflict with Russia despite the temporary suspension of intelligence sharing with Kiev. Yes, we all know that. And that's exactly what I just said a few minutes ago, isn't it? That this is some sort of deception campaign on part of US. US and Europe are playing these good cop, bad cop games with Russia, but it will not work. It will simply not work. And okay, if US wants to further prolong this proxy war, if they want to play some games with us, I guess we are ready. We are ready. And the longer this conflict continues, weaker and weaker Western ruling class and the collective West in general will become, including US. So if they want to go down that way, okay, we will help them to go down. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting that according to New York Times, aid for Ukraine will resume shortly. Let's translate this news also. So representatives of the US administration believe that their pause in providing assistance to Ukraine will be short-lived if Kiev gives in to the demands of the White House. New York Times newspaper writes, according to a publication, representatives of the US presidential administration suggested that their suspension of aid to Ukraine will be temporary. This, in their opinion, is possible if Zelensky agrees to fulfill certain conditions put forward by the White House. And of course, Zelensky would agree, by the way. As I said, this is a game that was played on public by Zelensky's regime, by Zelensky himself, by Trump, his administration. They, fool many people worldwide, but they're not going to fool us, by the way. Let them play. But we know what is going on. And I guess we are ready. And most likely, once Zelensky will sign up, whatever paper Trump will give him, on the same day or day after, shortly after that, White House will start accusing Russia that it's Moscow that don't want a resolution of this conflict. Even though Trump's administration and European NATO member states never come up with some solutions or some initiatives that would be acceptable for Russia. Everything they said until now is something that Russia already opposed. And just a little while ago, I published, for example, on my Telegram and Twitter X page, For example, yet another short clip of an interview of Russian ambassador in UK, when he once again said directly that British or French or any other European troops, any troops from hostile states, hostile to Russia, are unacceptable for Moscow to be deployed into Ukraine. How many times Moscow gonna says same stuff? But seems like, you know, Washington on one hand, London, Paris, Berlin, some other capitals on other, they are just ignoring what Moscow have to say. Okay, let's see how far they will go and how all this escalation with Russia will end. I don't think that they're gonna. I don't think they are ready for what is coming. I will say that. Meanwhile, these sick games that Western ruling class, Western elites are conducting now is so out of touch with reality, so out of control, and so despicable that this war criminal and Ukrainian neo-Nazi Zaluzhny, who acts as Ukraine's ambassador into UK now, is openly accusing US, by the way, of destroying world order. He's criticizing US. I mean, that's sick games, man. That's sick games. Washington's actions threaten their existing world order and the future of NATO. Former top Ukrainian general Valery Zaluzhny said on Thursday, attempts by the US President Donald Trump's administration to restore ties with Moscow place their unity of the Western world at risk. He has argued. Zaluzhny, who currently serves as Kyiv's ambassador to UK, was speaking at the panel discussion hosted by British think tank Chatham House. He claimed that Trump is seeking to revise their modern system of international relations. It is obvious the White House has questioned the unity of the whole Western world, Zaluzhny said, and now Washington is trying to delegate their security issues to Europe without the participation of the US. This is all fake stuff, by the way. This is all false narratives. Yet again, part of this good cop, bad cop game that US and Europe are playing. Clearly, behind the closed doors, Washington, London, Paris, Berlin, they are acting, in coordination, and soon enough they will accuse Russia that it's Russia that is against peace. Very same Trump that today talks about some criticizes Kyiv regime and talks about some these temporary measures, ceasefire and so on. He will start accusing Russia and escalate with Russia. He cannot be trusted, by the way. US administration cannot be trusted and will not be trusted ever, no matter who is in a White House. It is what it is, man. They think they are too clever, isn't it? Okay, we will see. RT meanwhile is reporting that, but it's same time, by the way, it is quite humiliating for US, isn't it? That these puppets of the CIA or MI6, in case of Zaluzhny, are openly criticizing US, even if this is a part of the game that Western elites are playing now. Still, it is embarrassing for US that some non-entities like Zaluzhny and Zelensky, these mass murderers, are openly criticizing their White House, US, and demolishing the role, while doing so, of this major superpower in this world. Still major, but not for longer. If US will go down this path of further escalation with Russia, and seems like that's the direction that US is heading, then US as a major superpower gonna finish in relatively short time, historically speaking. RT is also reporting that Putin hits out at wannabe Napoleons. Some people still can't get over Napoleon's defeat by Russia. President Vladimir Putin has said. He made the comments after French President Emmanuel Macron called Moscow a threat to his country. In a televised address on Wednesday, Macron said Russia is a threat to France and Europe and that he is considering expanding the French nuclear umbrella to protect other EU member states. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called Macron's speech highly controversial, adding that Paris is apparently contemplating a war. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov compared the French president to Napoleon, whose disastrous invasion of Russia eventually led to his downfall. Putin also referred to Napoleon's infamous retreat from Moscow during his meeting with the members of the Defenders of the Federation Fatherland Foundation in Moscow on Thursday. One of the attendees mentioned a church in Smolensk, a city in western Russia that was briefly occupied by Napoleon's troops in 1812. And then we have a quote here. You mentioned Smolensk, it's a museum and the church that has existed since Napoleon's invasion, Putin said. Some people still can't get over it. There are still people who want to return to the times of Napoleon, but they are forgetting how it ended. After subduing most of continental Europe, Napoleon, as we all know, led his army of 600,000 men into Russia, which was ruled by Alexander I at the time. Despite their occupying Moscow after the bloody Battle of Borodino, Napoleon was unable to make the Russians surrender and was forced to hastily retreat, losing the majority of his army in the process. Yes, Napoleon ran away as a coward, as he was, by the way, dirty freaking bitch. And very similar dirty freaking bitches in Europe are barking again. Okay, we put in their places many times the so-called elites in Europe, and if necessary, we will repeat that. We are ready, Bring it on. Just bring it on, and, we will show you where your place is, so-called elites in Europe. What is sad, by the way, that if these so-called elites in the West will go ahead with the next phase of escalation with Russia, and it seems like this is the clearly direction that they are heading, well, ordinary people gonna suffer, by the way. In very same Europe, unfortunately here in Russia too, ordinary people, us, that gonna experience some difficulties. Not those so-called elites, right? That's a sad part of it, especially sad part of it. But who knows? Maybe this time around, Western so-called elites will get smashed also and completely destroyed. That would be good for humanity, for sure, for the future of humanity. Because as I said many times before, Western so-called elites, Western ruling class, is existential threat for humanity. This is just too obvious. And it does not matter where you live, in US, in EU, in India, China, South America, or Africa. Western ruling class, Western so-called elites are your enemies and existential threat to you, to your family, to your friends, to everybody. It's just factual. It is what it is. Meanwhile, we have additional information that Moscow considers deployment of peacekeepers, so-called peacekeepers in Ukraine, as NATO's involvement in the conflict. So Moscow sees no room for a compromise on a potential deployment of European so-called peacekeepers contingent on the territory of Ukraine. Such a step would mean direct official involvement in the conflict with Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said these discussions is being conducted with an openly hostile goal, and they do not hide why they need it, Lavrov said at the press conference in Moscow. According to minister, the Russian side will consider the presence of these troops on Ukrainian territory in the same way as it considered the potential presence of NATO in Ukraine. We absolutely will not observe such actions. So this will mean, I want to say again, no longer a supposedly hybrid but a direct, official, undisguised involvement of NATO countries in the war against Russian Federation. This cannot be allowed, Lavrov stressed, and well, I mean, I wonder how many times high-ranking Russian officials have to say same stuff again and again to reach those psychopaths in the Western elites and to calm them down if these statements can do that, because Moscow is clear. You send your troops, that means you are openly engaged in war with Russia, and subsequently one should assume that Russia will take whatever actions are necessary to neutralize the enemy forces, no matter these forces are from Kiev regime, from Romania, from Poland, France, Germany, UK, or elsewhere, right? Moscow is very clear on that. But yet again, time after time after time, White House and the European capitals are talking about this temporary truce that they need to rearm and reinforce Kiev regime and to bring more means into Kiev-controlled territory, or more means of destruction. And they're continuing to talk about deployment of so-called European peacekeepers, which is a NATO troops, by the way, right? And that's why I have no trust in statements of or the actions of the White House, by the way, current administration, because if they were serious about the escalation, Trump would never, or his teammates will never say anything about deployment of European troops, because this is clearly, it's clear, it's unacceptable for Russia, right? But Trump himself did talk about deployment of European troops, and many other officials in US also talking about this on almost on daily basis, right? And same goes for this topic of nonsensical temporary ceasefire. No, Russia seeks complete resolution of their crisis. No temporary decisions are acceptable, right? So that's why, by the way, that's why, despite even though I want this conflict to end, I want U.S. leadership to be genuine and to be for de-escalation, but one thing is what we want, and other is what is happening in reality, right? So we cannot allow ourselves to be misled. Am I correct? Our team, meanwhile, is reporting that Poland is calling EU for arms race with Russia. The EU must escalate its military build-up and win arms race against Russia, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has stated. His statement came aiming growing calls by Western European leaders to increase defense spending, citing what they describe as a threat from Moscow. In a message posted on social media on Tuesday, Tusk claimed Russia has started a new arms race and insisted that the EU must respond. The war, the geopolitical uncertainty, and the new arms race started by Putin have left Europe with no choice. Europe must be ready for this race, and Russia will lose it like the Soviet Union 40 years ago. Tusk wrote, well, just go ahead and do it, by the way. Do whatever race you want, but Moscow is very clear that Russia is not interested in seeker game plays with our enemies, right? So Kremlin said that Russia will not participate in the arms race. Russia will not succumb to provocations from Poland and will not get involved in arms race. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov is confident that Russian President Vladimir Putin will figure out how to prevent this from happening. This was stated by the press secretary of the head of the state in an interview with the journalist Alexander Yanushev. So yes, I mean, we don't need no arms race, by the way. Russia is acquiring weapons that are absolutely necessary for defensive purposes. Russia has no plans to go offensive and occupy Poland or Baltic states, or I don't know, France or England or UK. No one has such ideas here in Russia. It's just a Western sick propaganda that misleads people that Russians are dreaming about occupying Europe, occupying entire world, entire solar system, then galaxy, and then neighboring galaxies, and that kind of nonsense. In reality, by the way, all we want here in Russia is to be left alone and to just live as peacefully as we and happily as we possibly can. That's it. If not provoked, Russia will conduct no hostile steps towards any country, by the way. It's just too obvious, isn't it? So therefore, Russia will acquire weapons that are absolutely necessary for defensive purposes, being hypersonic weapon systems or whatever else, but no arms race are interesting for us. We just don't care. And the Europeans, if they want to spend entire their money, entire their finances on arms, well, let them do it. If it comes to full-scale war between Europe and Russia, between NATO and Russia, we all understand that that war quickly will go nuclear. And if it comes to nuclear exchange, then, well, that's going to be the end of everything, right? So therefore, I don't think any volume of weapons going to help European states to survive in that undesirable scenario. Correct? RT, meanwhile, is reporting that Trump calls for getting rid of nuclear weapons. US President Donald Trump has said all countries should abandon nuclear weapons instead of engaging in arms race. It'd be great if everybody would get rid of their nuclear weapons, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office on Thursday. According to media, Russia and US have by far the most. China will have an equal amount within 4 or 5 years. I doubt that, but China is increasing its nuclear capabilities for sure. And it would be great if we could all denuclearize, because the power of nuclear weapons is crazy. It's crazy. I would very much like to start those talks. Trump added, denuclearization would be incredible. Well, in a perfect world, yes. But in real world that we are living, where Western ruling class, Western so-called elites are existential threat to humanity, in this world, nuclear weapons for Russia are absolutely necessary. So I personally are absolutely against denuclearization. It's opposite. I want Russia to build more hypersonic means of delivery of their nuclear weapons, and I want Russia to build more nuclear weapons too, to make sure that if Western ruling class will dare to start full-scale war against us, as they are, seems like, trying to do, well, I want to make sure that our enemies, they might kill us, right? But I want to make sure that our enemies would not survive also. And that's what nuclear weapons guarantees. And as I said in my previous updates, Russia and US had enough nuclear weapons to literally guarantee mutual destruction, which means that there will be no winners. And it's not just about Russia and their collective West, by the way. If a full-scale war starts and a full-scale nuclear exchange will take place, I mean, this planet is doomed. Humanity is doomed. Because so much dust eventually, due to explosions and fires, so much dust will go up in our atmosphere that for the next 3 to 5, potentially 7 to 10 years, temperature will drop significantly. And if initial nuclear exchange itself will destroy all sorts of infrastructure all around the world, including supply chain and so on, then nuclear winter will turn this planet into a world that I mean, 1,000 times worst world that we have seen in post-apocalyptic movies. So that's going to be end of everything, really. Let's hope it will not come to it, but as I said, in ideal world, Trump, I would agree with Trump that we should get rid of nukes, but because it's too dangerous, because it is dangerous. But in this world that we are stuck, no, man, I will never agree on any denuclearization from Russian side. If US want to get rid of nukes, I mean, go ahead and do it. But we need the nukes to make sure that if we are attacked and if our enemies killed us all with their nukes, I want to make sure that we have capabilities to make sure that our enemies will be neutralized also. You know, that's been said. Let's go through some more news. And by the way, as I predicted quite a while ago, when pro-Turkish terrorist groups overtook power in Syria, civil war has started there, clearly. And if in previous days there was clashes between Druze and Christians and pro-Turkish terrorists or Damascus regime, pro-Turkish Damascus regime in suburbs of Damascus itself, now last 24 to 48 hours, some serious clashes are taking place in the coastal areas of Syria, in Latakia, Tartus areas, where mainly Alawite religious minorities are living. Alawites are part of Shiite Islam. They are Shiite Muslims. And there were some serious clashes. Damascus is sending its groups into Latakia and other settlements. Clashes are taking place. I did share some videos. On my Telegram and Twitter X page about this, and I guess it's only a matter of time. And if Alawites and the Christians and the Druze, if locals, by the way, in Latakia province will organize well enough, I'm quite sure they'll be able to repel and eventually destroy forces of the Damascus, this pro-Turkish regime in Damascus, and they might one day even declare independence from Syria. And by the way, I remind you that there are two major Russian military bases still there, in Latakia and Tartus, and I saw videos on internet yesterday that heavy gunfight was right next to base. So obviously, Russian militaries are taking extra measures for security, but the situation there is escalating, and escalating. Damascus declared a curfew before mid of this month or the next month, but I don't think curfew gonna help them much. Seems like religious and ethnic minorities in Syria already had enough, and they are rebelling big time, and they will have support, by the way. These Alawites in Latakia area most likely will get some help from Iran, most likely will get some help from potentially even Israel, by the way, because Israel does worries that this pro-Turkish regime in Damascus and the presence of Turkey itself in Syria is posing a threat for Israel. And I believe Israeli leadership asked US to influence Turkey's plans to build free military bases in Syria, air bases included, where Turkey wants to deploy its F-16s. And this is a threat for Israel, clearly, because currently, after these pro-Turkish terrorist groups overtook, Assad's government and established their regime, one may argue that Israel and Turkey are actually bordering each other. So some serious developments are happening in Syria. Of course, Of course, we should pay attention to these developments. TASS news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that India might launch Russian Su-57E. E is an export variant, fighter, fifth generation fighter jet production within a short time, according to Rosoboronexport, which is a Russian giant in military industrial complex. When it comes to export of their weapons, the Indian enterprises producing Russian Su-MKI fighter jets can launch a production of the fifth generation Su-57E fighters within a short time if India makes a positive decision. Russia's state arms seller Rosoboronexport said on Friday, in case of positive decision by the Indian side, the production of the Russian fifth generation Su-57E fighter jet can be started at their factories currently producing the Su-30 MKI fighters within a short time. Rosoboronexport is ready to implement their program of upgrading the fleet of Indian Air Force's Su-30 MKI fighters too, broadly involving enterprises of India's industry. In this effort, the company said it is possible to boost combat capabilities of the Su-30 MKI jet by way of integrating new air launcher weapons and upgrading onboard systems. According to this Russian arms exporter, India's HAL Aerospace and Defense Company has produced already more than 220 Su-30 MKI fighter jets at its production capacities, Rosoboronexport stressed. This is licensed production, by the way. Level of cooperation between Russia and India is on high level historically, obviously, and in many cases Russia is not just selling weapons to India, but also transferring technology, and many weapon systems are built in India itself eventually. And this information is prime example of that. India is well capable of building Su-30 MKI fighter jets, and this obviously helps India to develop, to acquire enough knowledge and technology to eventually build its own airframes, its own weapon systems, including fighters. And India builds, by the way, there is a Tejas, that's the name, I guess, if I remember correctly, Indian fighter plane. I will say good fourth generation fighter, but India might build fifth generation fighters too, if New Delhi agrees to cooperate with Rosoboronexport. By the way, when it comes to exports of their Su-57, Russian fifth fighter jet, reports are that Algeria has already signed a contract and will become a first foreign country to acquire these planes. Well, India may be second, who knows, but at the same time we should keep in mind that the US, I guess, will put some pressure on New Delhi to force it to buy US weapons as much as possible, including maybe US F-35 planes that are total garbage, by the way. But yet again, how many countries US forced to buy those planes that are extremely expensive, not just to buy, but also to maintain, by the way. So maybe India will have no option under US pressure but to decline this offer from Russia to build Su-57s and to buy Su-57s, and will go with their US F-35. Maybe, I don't know, but it is not random stuff that during the recent huge air show in India, US presented its F-35. I mean, they clearly want to push this garbage into Indian Air Force, and they might succeed in that. I don't know. We will find out soon. Trump launches a digital Fort Knox, according to RT. So US President Donald Trump has launched 2 new mechanisms for federal government cryptocurrency assets. Presidential executive order on Thursday has established a strategic Bitcoin reserve and the US digital asset stockpile overseen by the Treasury and the dedicated to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies administration considers these digital assets, particularly Bitcoin, as a stable stores of value that are likely to appreciate over time due to inherent scarcity. Well, the reserve is like a digital Fort Knox for the cryptocurrency, often called digital gold. White House crypto star David Sachs explained, estimating that government currently owns roughly 200,000 Bitcoin worth of 17 billion. Sachs added that in the past, the US sold some 195,000 Bitcoins for just 366 million. That was quite a time ago, I guess, when Bitcoin was much cheaper, representing a significant financial loss for taxpayers. Well, dear friends, I guess this information definitely boosts cryptocurrencies big time, and many other countries may follow footsteps of US and launch their own digital Fort Knoxes or something, and well, increased demand on cryptocurrency, of course, will increase its value. So if you are good with crypto, if you have good enough reserves in cryptocurrency, you might get some significant profits out of that in relatively short time. Anyways, I'm gonna end this update on this news. Hopefully you will find it informative and interesting. And if so, please click that like button, leave some commentary, and if you can, share video with your friends or the information about the existence of this channel. Yes, finally, if you like my work, if you want to support this project, you can do it through several means. All the links are on this video description box and in the pinned comment. And as I said in the beginning, dear friends, I guess this is last full news update, full show on YouTube and Rumble. From now on, I will publish full shows on Patreon and Boosty. So if you want to have access to these shows, please consider to join our communities on Patreon and Boosty. Of course, links are under this video description box and pin comment too. So yes, this is it for now. Have a wonderful day, great upcoming weekend, and take care. Bye for now.